wish you could have known Sam Proctor, Dr. Sam Proctor. He was the greatest preacher I ever heard. Heard him in Virginia. He was raised in the ghettos of Norfolk. But he rose from that to become the pastor of one of the great churches in New York City. He then became the dean of the graduate school in Rutgers. But he never forgot his ghetto upbringing. And he had some of the most interesting stories from it. I'm going to tell you one. He said they lived in a place where there was a rather strange woman. Well, she pushed a push cart around all over town, homemade push cart, and she picked up everything she could find, pieces of lumber, lampshades, broken glass, clothes, anything you can imagine. She picked up, put them in her push cart. She also went through the garbage and got cosmetics out of it. And she put them all over her face, and she did look rather strange. She also put all the clothes on she could possibly walk with. And the kids had a game, he said, they played. They'd run up behind her and say, "Crazy Ada!" And he said she'd turn around and try to chase them, and she had so many clothes on she couldn't catch anyone. He said, I was raised in a Baptist church, and they told me to love one another, and I just couldn't be part of that. But one day, he said, I was in the alley behind our house, and Mother was hanging out clothes, and I looked, and Ida went by. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I ought to try it one time. And he said, I sneaked up behind her. I couldn't do it with my whole heart, but I did say, "Crazy Ida." And my mother called me, "Sam." And he said, I lost half my body weight. She said, "Come here, come here." And she said, let me tell you about that girl that you called Crazy Ida. She was a beautiful young lady. We went to school together. She went to college. She married a man that abused her and beat her, and she went insane. And they took her children away from her and put her in the asylum in Petersburg. And you from Virginia know where that is. And she said when she came back here, that's the way she's been the rest of the time. And Sam, she's been hurt enough. She doesn't need to be touched by you like that. And Sam Proctor said, I ran as fast. I ran. I was so ashamed. I was trying to run away from myself. We all have idols in our life. In school, in life. People that don't measure up to us. You know, they're not pretty enough, smart enough, or name anything else. Some reason we just disenfranchise them. They're not part of us. They can tell by the look in our eyes and the looks on our face. We can hurt them with our hand not touching them, or our eyes with its glaze, or our look with our face. But we hurt them. They're the idols in our life. And this is so sad because Jesus went looking for people to touch. This is amazing. If you read through how many people he touched. A woman by the well at noon. You know why she was there at noon? Because all the other women came early in the morning when it was cool. But she was disliked and abused and had 5 husbands. Some of the other people there had never had one husband. So they hated her for that. But they thought she was just the kind you didn't touch, you know. And there she was with Jesus at the well, and the apostles came back, and they, what in the world is he talking to her for? But you know, when Jesus touched her with his presence and his love, she went back into that village, and she was so different that the people poured out to see who had changed her. He saw a man by the pool, hoping to get cured. 38 years he had been there. And Jesus asked him an interesting question: do you want to be healed? The man said, I've been here 38 years. What do you think? And Jesus touched him, and he rolled his little bed up and walked away and walked home. This is what Jesus did. But you know, to do this kind of thing, you have to be real and genuine. Not like the actor who told the young actor, look, the secret to acting is sincerity. Once you can fake that, you can become a great actor. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the genuine touch of caring and of love. Myrtle MacDonald from Scotland told about one of his fellow pastors. He said he was short and fat and his robe was too long for him. And he was always late, and he was always tripping over his robe. And now in Scotland, this pulpit would be way up and there would be stairs up to it. And one morning, he came running in late with his long robe on, started up the stairs and fell right on his face. And he collected himself and he flipped over on the stairs and said to the people, for those of you who are worshiping here for the first time, let me tell you that this is not the usual way I enter the pulpit. Well, now, you would think, what pulpit committee would put him on their list? But he loved the people, and he touched the people, and they knew his genuine heart and spirit, and they wouldn't get rid of him for anything. They loved him because he touched them. When I was a teenager in Jacksonville, 2 doors down from us, there lived a man who was had been a railroad man, big, burly fellow. But he had a stroke. And 2 sad things came out of that. One was having the stroke, because it impaired him some. But the second thing was his mind never quite came back, and he knew it. And that's sad. He knew he was not quite back. Well, he had a wife who was always at the big Baptist church downtown in Jacksonville. I believe she turned the lights off at night. She was down there doing good, but she wouldn't cook for her husband and the neighbors did. They cooked for him because she was always down there doing good for somebody. And one day, realizing the life he was in, he said, you know, this life isn't worth living. I think I'll jump off the bridge and end it. And she said, well, why don't you? Maybe jokingly, maybe not. But in a few days, one night, he jumped off the Main Street Bridge in Jacksonville and died. And I wondered how she felt when she went to the funeral. She was real big in church, and she was real small at home. But I had another family. One of my first marriages, weddings that I performed, it was Sammy and Lewis. And it was a really interesting wedding because everybody called her Sam and him Lewis, and I married Sam and Lewis, which was really interesting. But they had children, had a great marriage. But you know, I can never marry a person and read that marriage thing without thinking of them. Because most of the couples just come, I will be with you in in sickness and in health, and rich and in poor, and just go on. And they're thinking, get into marriage. If the pastor will get through with this, we can get on with things. But I always think of this because I married them, and when they were in their 40s, he was struck by cancer. And it's that very cruel kind of cancer. It kills you an inch at a time. Sammy stayed with him. She bathed him and fed him and clothed him. He became skin and bones. He got down to about 80 pounds, and he was a real tall fellow. She was there, night and day. And he died. And the whole church grieved for her and for him. But you know, she was a big person in the church. She led the music, the graduate of Florida State in music. And she was a big person at home. I told this story at Ridgecrest to 1,000 students, college students. And some of them came up to me after the sermon and said, "We know who that Samuel is. We know who Sammy is. She's in our church. We're here for this meeting from her church," and everybody knows about her. She was big at church, and she was big at home, and her marriage vows meant something. Brahms, Johannes Brahms, a lot of us really love his music, and he was a sensation in Europe. They gave parties for him in all the cities, and he went and enjoyed it. But his mother died in an almshouse back in Germany. And oh, he was broken when he locked himself in his room and spent days and wouldn't come out until he had written the Requiem Mass for the funeral. He was big on the circuit. He was little with his mother in his home. There was a teacher named Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson said, "I just love all the children. I just love the children." And she did pretty well at it. But there was one boy in her class named Teddy that she didn't care much for. And she took great glee in taking her red pencil and putting the big F on his failing scores. Teddy was different. Teddy, he looked like his hair had been combed with an egg beater. His clothes were never ironed. He had a sort of unfocused look on his face. He didn't do too well in school. But she didn't know the background. She didn't know that his mother was probably dying from this terrible illness, and that his father didn't care what Teddy did in school. He wasn't part of it. But to her, Teddy was just a nuisance. And then Christmas came, and all the students brought presents to Mrs. Thompson. Beautiful, perfume, wonderful little presents. Teddy had a brown bag with something in it. And as he came up to give it to the teacher, he dropped it. And it was a cheap-smelling perfume and a bracelet that had lots of the rhinestones missing out of it. And all the children laughed, "Oh, look at that, look what he brought, look what he brought." And Mrs. Thompson shuts them down and thought, "Well, I've got to get control of this." So she took some of the perfume and put on her. And she put the bracelet on. Then the bell rang and all the kids went out. But Teddy, he stayed. He went up to her and he said, "I'm so glad you like the perfume. You smell just like my mother. And I'm glad you like the bracelet. That was one of her favorites. I'm glad you like my gifts." And he went out. And Mrs. Thompson went down on her knees and asked God to forgive her for treating him and a few of the other children like that. Never touching them really, just not caring. They were nuisances. Well, the next morning, the class had a new teacher. It was Mrs. Thompson. She had been touched by God, and she was different. And she started helping the children, especially those that were a little back in their studies. And by the end of the year, Teddy had caught up with the class, and it was a good year. It was really a good year. Teddy went on, he caught up with the class, and he went to his next class. A few years later, he got a letter. I wanted to look at this to be careful with it. I just graduated from high school, number 2 in the class, just wanted you to know, love, Teddy. And she was so happy about that. And then 4 more years, and she got a letter. Dear Mrs. Thompson, I just finished college. Believe it or not, I was first in my class. How about that? Wanted you to be the first to know. Time went by, and 4 more years. He said, Dear Mrs. Thompson, I am now Theodore Southard, MD. Just finished medical school. Wanted you to be the first to know. A P.S. I'm getting married in 2 weeks. Will you come and sit where my mother would have sat if she had not died? Dad died last year, and you're the only family I have. Mrs. Thompson went. She sat where his mother would have sat because she had touched him and given him a gift that would last his whole life. She deserved it. There are many Teddys and Idas in our world, and we are to touch them because the touch gives love and worth to them. People like Teddy that had felt no worth at all suddenly have worth because they're loved and they're touched. You see, God has touched us through His grace with love and given us worth. We are now called the children of God. That's better than being president of the United States. He gave us worth, and He gave us His life. Touch someone and pass on what God has given you. Amen. Lord, in our haste, we walk by people and never see them. We have people stand in our presence and never notice them. Help us to be like Christ, looking for people to touch and to lift and to give worth and love to. We pray in Christ.